Picture this, I'm a bag of dicks, put me to your lips. I am sick, I will punch a baby bear in his shit. Give me lip, I'ma send you to the yard. Get a stick, make a switch, I can end the conversation real quick.
I am crack, I ain't lying, kick a lion in his crack. I'm the shit, I will fall off in your crib, take a shit. Hit your mama on the booty, kick your dog, fuck your bitch. That boy dressed up like you Santa and took pictures with your kids.
We the best, we will cut a frowny face in your chest, little wench. I'm unmentionably fresh, I'm a mensch. Get correct, I will walk into a court while it wrecks, screaming, yes, I am guilty, motherfuckers, I am death. Hey, you wanna hear a good joke?
Nobody speak, nobody get choked.
Hello and welcome to Dopey, the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And I'm Dave, and it's an incredible night for Dopey. Tonight we have legendary MC, civic leader, social activist, actor, marijuana advocate and stoner, barbershop, impresario, and entrepreneur, Killer Mike. What's happening?
How you doing, Dave? Man, good to talk to you, man. Shouts out to all our people out there who get dopey, man.
Right on, man. What an honor it is to have you on the show. I'm a big fan, and I'm learning more and more and more about you. Out of all those titles, which is your favorite title?
Out of all those titles, which is my favorite title? My favorite title is Shay's husband.
All right.
I'm married to a dope wife, and she also is a fellow stoner, and our life kind of balances, and we thrive through we thrive as stoners. So my favorite title is Shay's husband, and next to that, it's probably Dan and Stoner.
Right on. So you're very smart, because happy wife is a happy life, which is something exactly. I learned that very slowly, way too slowly.
Yeah. Shut the fuck up and do as you're told.
Do as you're told, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I commend you to be such a happy stoner. I was once a happy stoner, and my stonerdom got canceled out by terrible heroin addiction. So my stonerdom dried up.
I'm the one to my mother was an artist and suffering from some addictions. Cocaine was a much sexier and different drug in the 70s and 80s, and it led to a lot of people's addictions. As a stoner, though, that's all I've ever, I don't have a tolerance for real drugs, like, anything that's processed, coke, heroin, and stuff. I don't really have the tolerance. I don't even drink alcohol, so for me, it's just a plant, and that's pretty much where I am with it. That's all I can do. Painkillers I've had to take a couple times after surgery. That shit hurts so bad, locks your stomach up, fuck shit, like touches the shit up. I could, God bless those who had the strength to do real drugs. I've never had that kind of fortitude. So. Right.
And you hurt your shoulder, right, recently?
Yeah, I tore my rotator cuff on my right arm 3 years ago, and I tore the left arm and had surgery about 7-8 weeks ago on it.
All right, and you're feeling okay now?
Yeah, I managed to stop taking the opiates about 3 weeks in, and just been, marijuana and lots of stretching and exercises.
You didn't the opiate didn't catch you at all. You didn't. Did you ever have a moment with the painkillers where you were like, I know what they like about this?
No, I broke my ankle years ago in St. Louis, and I was given a real heavy opiate, and it was. I remember talking to the doctor like, "Yo, when is it gonna kick in? My ankle still hurts." And he says, "You should be feeling it right about." And right when he said down, I got the most incredible warm rush that ever felt through my body. I felt better than I've ever felt, and I knew my ankle was broken. I said, anything that makes me feel this close to heaven, and I know I'm in pain, I never want again. And so I did that dance that night in the hospital, and years later, running with a little flip, I got introduced to lean, and I had a lot of fun running around in Texas for a couple months on that, and then your stomach starts locking up. And Bun B called me out of nowhere, like, "Yo, you going a little too hard on that." So I put that down, and I ain't really rocked with him since. So I did a little rapper dance a couple times, but it's it feels too good to do consistently.
Tell me about it. I know exactly what you mean. Now, in my little research about you, I found out a lot of interesting stuff. The first song that popped up to me was this Black Power, White Powder song.
Yeah. Black Power, White Powder.
And so, what's the deal with that? How would you describe that?
People always drugs in the black community during the 80s and 90s. It's just kind of decimating the community. And they did, and there was, if you know about Iran-Contra, the government's involvement in allowing cocaine to flood into poor and urban communities, then you understand that there was a real evil agenda behind it. But with that said, from an economic standpoint, at a time when jobs were being American, things of that nature, the dope man, the dope boy and the hustler became local heroes because they were the people that were opening businesses. They were the people that started moving companies, trucking companies. Those were the people who bought storage facilities, that bought and refurbished houses. They were the entrepreneurs. In the same way in the old South, bootleggers. You talk about the Kennedys. Their dad, made money from bootlegging.
Right.
So in the South, if you wouldn't have NASCAR without bootlegging, my grandfather was a former liquor runner. I can remember being, I think, second or third grade when GBI came to our house because my mom and dad had like 100 gallons of moonshine in our attic. So it's for me, Black Power, White Powder was just an opportunity to give a story or an example of someone who survived the drug war, survived the drug era through entrepreneurship. And not, all stories don't end up with you going to jail and you being killed. Some of them end up with you just becoming an entrepreneur, leading a square life. You just haven't had your start through criminal acts. And no one should be ashamed of that. I mean, this country was started, through criminality. If it wasn't for slavery, we wouldn't have had the 200-year economic head start that we got. That got us free from the UK, essentially. So, in America, behind every great fortune is usually a great crime.
Right.
So I'm just simply telling the community I'm from, take a little more pride in your criminals that did it the right way.
I hear you. And from what I read, you participated in a little bit of criminality before you got your entrepreneur in full swing. Is that true or untrue?
Yeah, I learned how to be an entrepreneur selling crack. That's how I learned economics and the raw, rudimentary lessons of economics through just street sales.
Now let me ask you, because we usually have like addicts on telling crazy stories about going to see the dope man or whatever. Do you have any, can you remember, because it's probably a while ago, do you remember any really crazy moments selling crack?
There are a lot of crazy moments selling crack. I can remember a guy named Pee Wee teaching me how to put Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola or something, and while he was cooking to make it darker, to make it look like tan. I can remember.
Right.
I can remember one of my homeboys he had just trapped all week. It was just fast asleep and woke up to a crackhead giving him head. And then it was after he finished, she was like, "Now you owe me." So she basically just raped him, and then it was like, "Now you owe me a $20 rock." And this, hear this now, it's crazy. But we were 15-year-old kids. You know what I mean? We weren't.
Here, wait, Mike, you're in and out. This stuff is too good. I can't lose this.
I said the funny thing is we were 15-year-old kids. This was going on. This is you're 14, 15. My before, the first crack I wasn't even real. Man, fast.
Hold on, Mike. Why is the connection so bad all of a sudden? This is the good stuff. You're killing me.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
So the first shit I saw wasn't even real. My friend, Fat Fred, came to class, and he had what they call a bomb, would be $500 to $1,000 worth of crack rocks already pre-cut and bagged up. And he had a whole bomb of just fake shit. And he was like, "Yo, we can sell this." So I was like, "What do we do with it?" And I was like, "Yo, we can ride the bus to my other grandma's neighborhood. We can sell them all as breakdowns,
and we got money for starter jackets and Nikes.
There it is.
I didn't know until years later. One of my homeboys, who people hear me rap about and see me running around with, named Sleepy, had actually made it and gave it to Fred. So we went to my other grandmother's neighborhood and sold it. We got the hell out of there, and then we went and bought starter jackets and Nikes.
Did anybody ever see you again after that?
Not for a long time. My other grandma wondered why they visited for like a year, but that was why I didn't want to get killed. You know, it was the 80s and the 90s. It was adventure. Like, I advise anybody who wants to know what it was like to go watch the movie Fresh. Fresh is one of my favorite movies because if you were a kid growing up in the 80s or 90s, if you had some sense about yourself, you could mature very quickly. You know what I mean? And if you didn't, you know, it'd take you under.
Yeah. And you describe it kind of like a happy, fun teenage adventure, not like some terrible, debaucherous crack situation, which is nice to hear.
It wasn't. You know, I mean, it wasn't in our mind. It was when you look at it in its totality as you got older. But when you're young, and that's just what the environment is becoming, you just adapt. You know what I mean? So, and it, you know, I survived it. So it was a crazy adventure. You know, I can remember graduating 8th grade, and we all went to Tony's house, and everybody just got liquored up, and just like we were drinking like OE and fucking St. Ives. He was just drunk as fuck. His brother was a Marine, and his brother and them couple of Marine homeboys came out, and they all pulled like 12-gauge shotguns on us and scared the shit out of us and made us think we were getting robbed. You know what I mean? And so, you know, it was an adventure. It was funny now, but it's nothing that I want my kids to go through. You know what I mean? My kids have a radically different life, but I kind of sought out adventure. You know, I wanted to be in the mix. So my uncle, I just told my dead uncle, God bless the dead, and man, he was selling like 4-ways and 9s, which is like 4.5 ounces or 9 ounces, which is like 8 1/4 keys. And I convinced him to start breaking them down to just ounces. And I convinced the homies at school who were buying 1/4 ounces a piece to start going in together. Because I'm like, you paying $2.50 a piece for a 1/4 ounce, y'all can get the whole ounce for you know, $800. My uncle was giving them to me for $7.50. So I get guys to go in on the ounce, and I make $50 or $100. I just have them meet us at the train station after school. So the crack era actually just taught me to be more of an entrepreneur, to think more, to think something through, or someone that hadn't thought of, and cap. Like, when you hear people in Atlanta say no cap now, that's essentially means I'm not putting anything extra on it. Like, there ain't no capping on it. So, you know.
There isn't what on it? There isn't what on it?
No cap. No cap means I'm not putting anything extra on it. Like, if I charge you,
I got you.
If I charge you $800 for the 1/4 pound, no cap. That's just what it is. You know, I ain't put no extra on it for myself. You know what I mean? So that's back then. Though, you was capping on everything. Everything you was selling, you was trying to put a little something on top of just to make you a little bit. You know.
Well, why else would you be selling crack if not to make a little extra cap, right?
Yeah, exactly. and then this one, though, the perfect thing about this one is you didn't have to buy or change nothing, because it was just a matter of hooking up a bunch of my young punk-ass friends with the money who didn't know a plug, with my uncle who was a plug.
Now, did everybody always say plug in your day? Because in my day, nobody said plug. They said the connect.
No, plug is a newer thing. Plug is a newer thing.
Everyone's saying plug. I'm like, what is this plug? I know the connect.
Well, the plug is the person that plugs you into it. You know?
No, I get it, Mike.
But,
I get it.
Yeah, but you know, plug is up. But plug is of the last 10 or 15 years, so it's old enough. It's seasoned.
Well, I'm old, so I missed this whole thing somehow in my sheltered heroin use on the Lower East Side. I don't know how, but I missed it. What got you out of the crack game? What moved your entrepreneur life forward? Was it a bad story or a good story? What was the end?
No, it's the person who invented trap music.
Oh, trap music. Hold on, I'm losing you though again. Get back to where you were. You sounded so perfect.
A friend of mine, the person who invented trap music.
Who's that?
T.I. Raw Hustle, T.I., King of the South.
T.I., yeah. You and T.I. are counseling the ATL mayor these days, right?
Yeah, yep, and we're homies. And he, at his trap museum, he put up 2003, the release of the release of his record. The first two things on that exhibit was his record, and Killer Mike attempts to make the first socially conscious trap music record. Like, my first record, Monster, was me exiting selling, drugs. And for me, man, I got to the point where I realized, like, I'm in my mid-20s now. Everybody I know who's catching a case is getting 12, 15, and 20 years. Everybody with gold teeth is getting 20 years or better. So I got the gold teeth out of my mouth. You know what I'm saying? I got a legitimate job as well as I kept hustling. But I was just, every day, it was like my nerves were just shot. I just realized I'm not going to last much longer in this shit. I got to get out of it. Because I was smart enough to do what I had to do. I was making good money. I was saving and investing my money in music. But my nerves were shot. I just didn't have, it wasn't a teenage adventure for me anymore. Now I'm an adult, and I'm responsible for me and 3 or 4 other guys. You know what I mean? And that just wasn't the move for me anymore.
You could see the consequences. Now the question is, this is a stupid question, man. I loved hip-hop music. I love hip-hop music. Could you define trap music? Like, where does trap music come from?
Trap music is music that comes from the trap. I mean, T.I. will give you the ultimate definition, but for me, it was music that was representative of cocaine culture on a street level, from a Southern perspective.
All right.
And that's what Tip gave us, and it's been, it spread, and it's went something to global and worldwide. But it was street music, it was drug selling music, it was right there from the corner, and from that perspective, and Tip did a brilliant job describing that world to the rest of the world.
And so did you, and then you hooked up with Outkast from there.
Yeah, Monster was on Outkast label. I did, but Outkast, they're great artists, and a lot of times great artists, unless you like Rockefeller is built off the raps of Jay-Z, but unless you have a Kareem and Dame, from a business perspective, it doesn't grow into the force that it grew into. So Outkast were phenomenal artists, but from the record company side, it never turned into what it could have been, because just that force wasn't there. So I kind of I went stagnant for a few years, and I went to the underground, and I kind of stayed with music. Well, I stayed with music, but I returned to the mentality of a drug dealer of like every day I have to be about my grind. I can't sit back and depend on the record company or depend on my friends who are other artists. I have to get rich independently, and that's where Grind Time Rap Gang, Bang Bang Bang, and I Pledge Allegiance to the Grind, and that's where that run came from. It came from me marrying, the hustle and grind that I had while I was in the streets with rap music and saying I want to make this work.
And you always loved that music, though, right? Even when you were hustling around and you were a kid buying starter jackets and Nikes, did you love hip hop?
Man, I loved hip hop, and in particular, I loved East Coast hip hop. So I was that kid that was running around buying starter jackets, listening to Gangstar, listening to Boot Camp Click, listening to Wu-Tang Clan. You know what I'm saying? Listening to Brand Nubian. Out West, Far Side, Hieroglyphics.
That was my time. You're talking. You're speaking my language here, Killer Mike. That was my favorite stuff.
Yeah, and as well as I love the Southern stuff too. I still was UGK. I still was A-Ball, MJG. I still was Luke and the Two Live Crew. Like, I still love this other stuff, but I really had an ear and a warrant to be involved in, East Coast hip hop. And so I was listening to a lot of, I was driving a 98, on True Evolves when I was playing, Wu-Tang Clan.
Right, amazing. I know you from Katz's. And you love Katz's, obviously, because I've seen you there a billion times. And you love Lenny, and Lenny is one of my favorite people at Katz.
Lenny is my man. We talk baseball. Lenny's one of the best human beings, I've met in New York, man. Me and my wife got a lot of love for the brother.
Well, you have to know, Lenny's not as great as you think, but I love him. You know what I'm saying?
He's great to me.
Of course he is. Lenny used to come over to my house after work every day. Me and Lenny would smoke bong hits after work every day. And Lenny would be like, Dave, your bong is way too filthy. And he would take me to the head shop to buy bong cleaner and a brush. And the two of us would be scrubbing the bong in my kitchen sink together. And we
never liked smoking out glass, man. I've never been into it.
Neither did Lenny. Lenny hated that shit, but I made him take bong hits anyway, and then he would roll the blunts. He would roll the blunts, and I would pack the bong hits, and we had a beautiful run until I got sober.
Yeah. I love Lenny.
But when you're there, you're the most humble cats regular who the highest profile, and I think that says a lot about who you are, and I love that about you, and you're also very cool with the people, and that's really beautiful too. It shows that you don't forget where you come from, and I really became aware of you during this last presidential election when you hooked up with the great Jewish candidate Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, Senator Bernard Sanders, absolutely.
And how did you hook up with him?
There was a DJ in his campaign that when people started asking.
Hold on, I'm losing you.
There was a DJ in his campaign when asked who were the rappers in particular in the South that could help him garner some followership and people pay him some attention. And I was suggested, and in spite of my name being Killer Mike, he listened to my message. You know, he saw my words were true. It gave me an opportunity to essentially be a surrogate for him. And I developed a friendship with him, talked to him for a couple times a month, have helped push local initiatives based on his national campaign, have helped push local politicians that were supported by him, got some folk elected, other people did. But I really have enjoyed befriending and being mentored by the senator. And one of the things that impressed me about his platform was him just initially saying, hey, marijuana shouldn't be on the Schedule 1 drug. You know, to elect the president, one of my first duties will be to take that off. You know, I think a lot of times we clap and applaud other people for being progressive because of skin color or because of political party and things of that nature. But if their policy isn't truly progressive, like what's easier for a president to do by executive order than just simply taking marijuana off the Schedule 1 narcotics list and saving thousands of people an arrest record and felonies that'll fuck up the rest of their lives.
Right.
You know, I just thought that was so simple to be done. You know, I thought honestly that that's something Obama should have done. And, you know, I get a little perturbed thinking that he did. And that's not me trying to rain down, heavy criticism on him. It's just saying if something is easy to do, you just do it, And then at this point, everyone knows marijuana is far less harmful than even alcohol. And the fact that we still are going back and forth about decriminalizing it for recreational use is rather stupid to me. And it shows that as a people, we aren't demanding more of our politicians and we aren't demanding what we truly want.
Right. And when you would hang out with Senator Sanders, did it surprise you that you guys got along so well, or it was just like whatever?
Well, it was just like whatever for me. He surprised me how candid he was and how sharp he was.
He's a Jewish guy from Brooklyn, man. That's candid.
Exactly.
That's born and bred.
But I got introduced to him through as a senator from Vermont, and then I learned, oh man, this guy's from Berkeley. You know what I mean? And he was in Chicago fighting for the civil rights of people who look like me, and he got locked up for it. That's when I really got to understand how feisty he is. He still has a wicked jump shot and moves around a couple miles a day. So he's sharp as a knife. And again, I'm still impressed by the senator. And I don't know if he's going to run again, but if he runs again, I'll be right there on this side pushing and working like hell for him.
You don't think he's too old to do it again?
No, absolutely not. So Reagan was a very old president.
He was too old, Mike. Reagan was too old. He lost his mind in office.
He was, but if we can trust that idiot, there's no way we can't trust the guy who's sharp. You know what I mean? Like Sanders is sharp. When you listen to him, when you talk to him, when you're engaging with him, he's sharp. So his body might not be as quick as it was 20 years ago, but again, he still does a couple miles a day and has a better jump shot than you or me. And his mind is still sharp as a knife. So I definitely am still hopeful.
No, I remember when I heard him in the debate, I was just like, well, I'm Jewish, and my family always told me there would never be a Jewish president because even though New York is very Jewish and Los Angeles is very Jewish, the country is not very Jewish. It's 2% or something.
Don't forget South Florida though. You gotta love
our Jewish people. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
the Southern New York, the retiree nation. When you put this Run the Jewels together, how did that happen? What was the beginning of that?
Well, Elle and I did an album called Rap Music first. That was my solo record. He produced the whole record.
LP.
He was featured on there. Yeah, he was featured on there. We went on a couple of records together. And then, shortly after, we toured together. Once we toured together, kids that would come to see me, come to see him, would give both of us love. But the same kids, at some point, when we would do our records we had together, would just go batshit crazy. And that's when we realized, oh, shit, we're on to something. And after that tour, L had to turn in a mixtape. I think to Fat Possum or something. And he writes a little slower, just as a solo artist, but he was like, yo, I have to just tape. I got a deadline. And I was like, yo, I'm going to come do it with you. So I wrote. I did the tape with him. We did like 6 records. Our partners were like, yo, y'all crazy if y'all don't make this whole record. We made the whole record, toured it, Run the Jewels 1, jumped off. And after that, it was like, yo, this is a group. We're mashing. And if we're going to be a group, we got to be a group like EPMD, like Outkast. We got to make 4, back-to-back, classic records, or we're not a group. So we set on our Zeppelin quest for 1, 2, 3, and 4.
That's awesome. And how did this crazy Meow the Jewels thing come out? Because I don't know if everybody knows.
L put it up as a joke, you know what I mean? And someone took the joke seriously, and they put a crowdfund together to fund some charities that were against police brutality and that were for paying for lawyers for people who protest. And a bunch of dope producers who probably should have made a dope Run the Jewels album made Meow the Jewels, and it has helped a lot of people.
And there's no words; it's just meowing. It's just cats.
Nah, there are words. There are words, but people make beats out of cat sound.
Is it cool? I have to listen to it. I just read about it. Is it cool?
Well, I don't like cats, so I've only listened to it twice.
Why did you listen to it the second time?
Because I was stoned.
There it is. Right on.
The first time was for curiosity. The second time I was just like, let me see if this sounds different if I'm stoned.
Now I'm a crazy Knicks fan. Okay, and which is sad, which is not an easy thing to be in this day and age.
In the 90s, though, you guys had Kenny, you got Starks, you guys had Oakley, you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Nasty.
Oh, when I was a kid, it was good times, but we never made it all the way, and it's tough to be a sports fan, a crazy sports fan when your team is not performing the way you'd like. And I think you can...
Tell it, I'm an Atlanta fan.
That's what I'm saying. I think you can relate.
Yeah.
And you got involved, though. You're heavily involved with the Hawks. You have one of your barbershops setting up in the arena, right?
Yeah, in State Farm Arena, we have one of the best views of the building. So if you pay thousands of dollars for the suites that the rich guys stand in and look down on the court, my barbershop is essentially the same thing. It's just a barbershop. So you can buy the $40, $50 seats and just come hang out in my barbershop all game and watch it. It's the swag shop, the shave, wash, and groom shop. We're a barbershop, but we're also a store masquerading as a barbershop. So you can pick up a bunch of cool shit, whether it's caps and jerseys that are collabs with Ebbets Fields, towels, brushes, personal care for men, beard oil, pomade or wave grease, do-rag, stuff like that. And we're about to have some other cool shit like jewelry and stick come in. So, it's really a dope store masquerading as a barbershop. It's a dope barbershop masquerading as a store. So come in and check us out, man. And we want to be in more arenas, and our goal is to have 150 stores nationwide. So we're looking at New York and L.A. next. We're looking at Houston, Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, and a bunch of other places in between. Nice.
Have you heard of this ice cream guy in the Lower East Side called Mikey Likes It?
I've heard Mikey Likes It. I have not had the ice cream.
I haven't had the ice cream either. Mikey's...
I'm in New York, so I gotta stop doing it.
He's a cool guy, and he's trying to come up with some kind of arena basketball plan, and I'm doing some weird collaboration with him, so I know he would love to meet you.
Okay, next time I'm up.
What was I going to ask you? Oh, yeah, I mean, you came up in Atlanta. You obviously got your start doing this crazy stuff, selling crack and learning business and being around criminality. And now...
Yeah, I watched The Goodfellas last night and thought about my childhood. It was crazy. When Henry said all I wanted to be was a gangster.
Yeah.
And getting a chance to work for Paul, like Fat Steve, who's a federal prisoner now. He's free Steve Jones, but Fat Steve was a guy from my rival neighborhood who was older than me, but he was a big, dark, skinny guy. He wore Rolex collared polos, creased Guess jeans. Like he dressed honestly like just like an upstanding business guy.
Right.
But he was a crack kingpin. He owned houses and barbershops and towing companies, and really helped me understand that he was like one of the influences for Black Power, White Powder, who taught me that this criminal money that you're making, you can turn into a legitimate business. He's a big part of the reason I went into barbershops and things of that nature, and he's a personal hero of mine.
So you thought,
Yeah,
did you see yourself in Goodfellas when you watched Goodfellas? You were like, you were the young black Atlanta 80s, 90s Henry Hill type who was.
Yeah, except I'm not a rat. You know what I mean?
You're not a rat nor a terrible drug addict.
Yeah. When I got old enough to realize that I might tell, I ain't, you know what I mean? But yeah, Henry turned out to be a rat. But early Henry, like the kid that was like, yo, like I liked school and shit. I actually got good grades, but after school, I was like, yo, fuck this shit. I'm going to the pool hall. Like I'm finna hang out, or I'm going to Steve's barbershop to hang out. Like I wanted to be where the action was. You know what I mean?
Right. Does it blow your mind that you're counseling the mayor, that you have a shop set up at the Atlanta Hawks arena, that you're counseling a presidential candidate? Does it just blow you away?
It does, man. Like I walk, you know, I live in a house down. There's a gate in front of my house, you know, and I walk my garbage down to the end of the driveway, just like Tony Soprano, and I turn around and I look at this big ass house, the gate in front of it, shit, and I just thank my ancestors. You know, I thank God. Just like, wow, this is amazing, because, you know, I always imagined that I would blow up, you know, whatever that means when you're 15 years old. But I didn't know that I'd be, you know, I didn't know that my words would be instrumental in getting a mayor elected, you know. Like Cuz Lightyear has a song called Chicken Talk, and I'm rapping on it with him. You know, Cuz Lightyear has a brand new album out called Blue Slime. Y'all should check it out. But I say, you know, what other niggas you know get mayors elected and still got a brick on his neck? So, you know what I mean? I got a 1 kilo Nike charm. Like that charm is made because I fell in love with that statue in art class. So my influences are from everywhere. But I didn't think I'd be advising a presidential candidate. I didn't think I'd get a mayor elected. I didn't think I'd have a hot ass wife with green eyes and red hair, you know. But, you know, I just always knew I liked girls that were redheads with freckles with great raps. So God kind of gave me everything I ever wanted. So I'm very careful to be thankful for it and to remain humble, you know what I'm saying, and hopefully, you know, let my imagination come up with new things to want. Like I never thought I'd be in the arena with my barbershops. I never thought I'd stand. You know, like we announced I have a Netflix show coming January 18th. We announced that today. Trigger
warning. I was about to bring that up. And like, that's your show, and it looks crazy and really funny. Is it funny?
It is funny. It is funny. It is challenging. It is crazy. It does make you think questions. And that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? So I hope and pray that we're blessed with a season 2, and it's going to be even batshit crazy and funny.
Right on. I love that, and I'm so grateful that you called in. That's so cool. And I just listened to this song, Nobody Speak Today, this DJ Shadow track. That shit is crazy. I love it.
Yeah, thank you, man. Oh, man, I talked about smoking woolies with Snoopy. I remember being 15 years old, being in a strip club, like sneaking in a strip club with my homie. And at that time, a lot of guys from Miami were in and out of Atlanta. And they had brought, like, wools to Atlanta, like putting coke in your blunt. I got slipped a wool, and my heart just went crazy.
The woolie is a joint laced with coke, right?
Yeah, exactly. I rapped about it. Nobody speak. I rapped about smoking a woolie with Snoopy. But that is something that comes like to Atlanta out of Miami. And the guy slipped me a wool in the club, and I remember having to call my mom. I'm 15. At this point, my mom's only 31 because my mom's 16 years older than me. And I'm telling my mom, like, yo, somebody slipped me something. Like, I think I'm going to die. My heart is going. So she literally has to talk me through going to a convenience store, getting some milk and some bread, eating it, getting my heart system to calm down. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I love her, and I miss the shit out of her because not every kid is blessed with a mother who's a fucking G, and I was, you know what I mean?
She was like, Mike, you obviously just smoked a woolie. All you need to go is to the convenience store and have some bread and milk, and everything will be chill.
That's exactly what she was like, hey, nigga, somebody slipped you a wool. And she told my homie, yo, don't give him a quart of milk, have him drink some milk, have him eat some bread, like, dude, his heart rate slow down. You know what I'm saying? So he won't be all panicky and sweaty and shit. But yeah.
I promise you, my mother wouldn't have been like, David, that must have been a woolie you were puffing. I don't think so. But that's awesome, man. And please be in touch. I want to respect the time that you guys gave me, and I'm so happy you called in, and I can't wait to see you up at the deli again.
Man, I'll be there soon. I apologize for for being late. It was just Atlanta traffic is crazy, so it took me longer to get settled than I thought. But I love you guys, man, up at Cafe. You and Lady, y'all are great to me always. Saw Fat Joe last time I was in there, so I'll be back in there again. So me and Shell come. We're just waiting for it to get a little warmer. It's been cold as shit on the East Coast, man. We were scared to come up north.
And also, the Dopey Nation loves you too. Like, I mentioned you a couple times early on, and I got email after email just, when's Mike going to come on? When's Killer Mike? When's Killer Mike? So this crowd really are big fans, so just know that you're loved by the Dopey Nation as well.
I got a lot of love for them, man. I you know, for all my people out there, for all my stoners and whatnot, for all my people who are battling and fighting with addiction every day, you know, my love and support with you. You know, for the soldier you guys lost, man, my love and respect to him. And I'm just saying, you know, let's keep each other safe out there. You know, if you're needling, let's make sure we're clean. You know, if you're partnering with somebody and you guys are getting high together, you know, let's make sure we're looking out for each other and just try to protect us. You know, you can't protect people from themselves all the way, but we can make sure people survive, you know, the experience. So let's just try to do more of that out there.
Right on, Mike. Thank you so much, man.
All right, love and respect, Dave.
You too, Mike. Be easy, man. Later. So there he was, the great Killer Mike. I bet you Bernie Sanders called Killer Mike a mensch. And this guy's definitely a mensch. He's always looking out. He's always helping out in the community, coming through on Dopey. I love that. And there was a bunch of stuff that I totally forgot to ask him about. He wrote this song called Crown, or The Crown, where he talks about selling crack to a pregnant woman. I wanted to ask him about that. I wanted to ask him about... he did a song with the Muppets. I wanted to ask him about that. But maybe one day we'll get Killer Mike back on Dopey, and he could even do some sort of Dopey freestyle, which I would love. Now we're going to change gears and go from rap, hip-hop, trap, superstar, crack dealer, to original Dopey guy. I'm talking about in the first 30 episodes, I want to say, this guy came on. He was Chris's friend, Ted's friend, DJ, also known as Don. He told a story about stealing 1,000 Vicodins. He came on in my apartment on the Lower East Side. He was on methadone when he came on. And he had crazy stories. So here we go. Here he is. We might have called him DJ, but his name is Don. And welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, Dave? Glad to be back on, man.
It's been a million years. I mean, it was literally probably just about 3 years ago coming up, right, that you were on. I think it was in like February or something, or March. Well, do you remember when it was on?
Yeah, vaguely. I remember taking the subway to your house and having trouble finding it. And it was cold. It was really cold. And, I re-listened to that edition. I kind of go in and out with listening to the show, as terrible as that is to admit. I love the show, and I love you, and, I loved Chris, and but I re-listened to the episode that we did, and, it was a lot of fun, and it seemed like a lifetime ago. But yeah, about 3 years ago, I think is when it was last time I was on. Which since then, you kept it going. You had a large growth and following, and you're doing awesome stuff, man. I know you're helping a lot of people.
Well,
so it's an honor to be on.
I appreciate that. It's funny to me, like. Helping people is definitely like the side effect of doing Dopey. Like, Dopey is about like having a good time, trying, like, it's my dream of having a show. It's trying to be funny. It's trying to be entertaining. And if people get helped, it's like a side effect. It's like if people like grow hair from like using some sort of fertility drug or something. It's a good side effect that people get help from Dopey. But when you were on Dopey 3 years ago, you were on methadone. You were living in Manhattan, and Chris was always like, we got to get that guy back on. His Dopey stories are so crazy, and I was like, well, ask him to come back on. And I know Chris hit you up here and there, and you were just out there, right?
Yeah, man, it's been a long few years, to say the least. And actually, a couple of days before Chris died, he had actually sent me a Facebook message asking, mentioning wanting to get me back on, and I didn't end up responding until after I found out. But yeah, I've been out there, man. I'm happy to say that I've come back around. I think I've definitely done enough research, and finally kind of committing really for the first time. I mean, I've been in and out of treatment since I was 17, and I'm 30 years old.
Right.
So these are not new concepts as far as AA is concerned. But to be honest, I just, I've never been willing to do what I was told in the rooms. I would go to meetings and I would, come late and leave early and, socialize and thought that there were definitely some interesting concepts. But as far as working steps or doing service work, those were all things that I thought were for other people.
Right. Or optional. But before we even get to the solution, I want to really lay this out because, I think that since Chris died, we've had a bunch of people on with long-term sobriety, and we've obviously had a shitload of drug addicts on, but you're fresh from the war, and I would like you to just tell, your qualification, a little bit about your qualification, what kind of drug addict. Obviously, we're all just drug addicts, but I know the Dopey Nation that's listening, a bunch of them are using, and a bunch of them are like, who the fuck is this guy, and what's his deal? So describe what kind of stuff you were getting yourself involved in. What are you coming out of, kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. So 3 years ago when I was on the show, I was on methadone and I was stable. I was in a relationship. I'm in Michigan now, and I'm originally from Michigan. In 2012, I had moved out to New York. Tried the old Geographic, and it had actually been in treatment for 6 months at Narconon, which is a Scientology rehab.
Yeah, you talked about that on Dopey.
Okay, yeah, I think that's right. So I was there, and like I mentioned, I think just being 6 months institutionalized, doing anything, being away from drugs, I got a little bit better, but it didn't take the Scientology practices and all that. I dropped them very quickly, and I was getting high. Well, the way that it worked there was if you weren't an alcoholic, if your main thing wasn't booze, they said that you could drink, and I am an opiate addict. And then as things have progressed, opiate or heroin and cocaine together is my drug of choice. And I've also, in the last couple of years, started to dabble with meth, which is a whole nother animal. So anyways, so 3 years ago, I was in a relationship with this girl that I had moved out to Manhattan, strung out, and got on methadone, and that stabilized me. And then I very quickly met a girl who kind of took me in. She had her life together, and she had an apartment, and so we got together, and things were okay for a while. And I was still drinking and taking methadone, but I was going to meetings anyways for God knows what reason.
Why do you think you were going to meetings if you were drinking and taking methadone? Did you talk about drinking and taking methadone at the meetings?
No, I didn't talk about the drinking part. I did talk. Yeah, I guess I talked about it with some people. I did actually have a sponsor that was more just like a friend who was an older guy who'd been around for a while and had lived a crazy life, and so I would be honest with him.
That wasn't was that guy Keith?
No, that was Ned Van Zant, this guy who, because you and I knew some of the same people. We actually went to a meeting. Was it the Atlantic group that we went to, or we went to?
No, I don't think. Yeah, we went to RFI, I think. Or I don't remember even going into a meeting with you. I just knew this guy who was like this crazy guitar player who played with Richard Hell in the 80s or the 70s, and he was this punk rock guitar player. And I met him, and he was describing you to me. You know, I had never met you. It was before we did Dopey. It was before I had met you. And he just kept describing you as this incredibly handsome waiter that worked at Nobu. And then when you mentioned, and that he was a heroin addict, and then when you had mentioned to me that you were this waiter at Nobu, I was like, holy shit, this is the handsome waiter that Keith keeps talking about.
You put two and two together. Honestly, I don't even remember anyone named Keith. I did meet some incredible people. I think, to answer your question, I think I was going to meetings because although I sort of had it together somewhat, I still felt very lost. And from a young age going to meetings, being forced to through treatment, and somehow avoided legal ramifications. But I always liked meetings because of the people, whether I was getting high or not. I mean, I've actually done a lead before while I was high on Oxycontin back when I was like 18, you know, that sort of thing. So I've always liked the meetings. I've always liked the camaraderie, the fellowship.
Well, there are people, there are people that have been through exactly what we've been through, and you go there and you're like, you live your life, your normal life, and then you go to a meeting and it's like, holy shit, there's my secret life. These are my people, right. In essence. No matter how much you might relate to one or another, there's going to be somebody there who's done the stupid shit that we've done, or that you've done, or that I've done, whatever.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. And I think just the wide spectrum too. I mean, I always say the coolest people I've ever met have been in the program, and that, I think that's definitely true. The ability to keep it real and relate, and there's a lot to be said for it. And so what happened with me was I was dabbling. I was dating this girl, and we had this social life, and we were going out a lot and drinking, and I was on methadone. I was kind of keeping it together, and then my dad passed away. He actually took his life.
Oh my God!
A whole mother. Yeah, so he had some substance stuff as well. He was always a big drinker, and I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I don't. As they say, nobody can characterize someone else as alcoholic. I mean, you have to do that yourself. But he definitely had alcoholic tendencies, and he was a stockbroker. And in 2008, lost everything basically. And I grew up in a suburb of Detroit called Grosse Pointe. That's very affluent, and it's all about how big your house is and your job and all this stuff. So we had a couple cottages and all this stuff. So we, growing up, I had everything, and I think his identity was tied to that in a lot of ways. And so when he couldn't do what he wanted to financially and wound up losing our cottages and our house, he just became very hopeless. And him and my mom were having issues. They split up, and she got cancer shortly thereafter.
Oh my God, Don.
Yeah, it was and I was in New York at the time. I just moved out to New York when my mom got cancer, and he just couldn't handle it. He came from an era where, they don't talk about what's going on. You don't ask for help. So he was, throughout the years, he would try. You're trying to be understanding as far as the AA stuff and the rehabs and all that. But at the end of the day, I remember on many occasions him just saying, why can't you just stop?
Right.
And and I would look at him, and I didn't have an answer for him because I couldn't, and so anyways, he wound up taking his life in 2014, and I remember my ex-girlfriend and I, we flew into Detroit for the funeral, and I had the honor of doing the eulogy, which was really cool. He comes from 7 sisters and 2 brothers, and I've got 30 cousins, and everybody that I've ever known my whole life showed up at the funeral. I mean, it was really touching, and to be able to kind of show up and do the eulogy was really probably one of my proudest moments in my short life thus far. But anyways...
And you were sober for that? Or you were just on the methadone?
So I was on methadone, and I was drinking.
Did you get drunk to do the eulogy? Or what was that like? Did you have to, like... did you drink for it?
To do the eulogy, what I wound up doing, actually, and I just remembered this. My mom has always been prescribed to Klonopin and Xanax, different benzos, and I remember getting into her stash. So I was taking those to kind of cope. And looking back, it sort of makes sense because I was so numb. I was it was all a blur, and it was just so. I was just in shock. With that, when something like that happens, it just. I couldn't face reality, and I've been stuffing my feelings and avoiding reality my whole life also, so that was, it sort of comes second nature. But so anyways, I got back to New York, and that's when it hit me, that, my dad was gone, and there was a lot of guilt involved. He spent a lot of money in treatment over the years, and, I just, could not stay sober and kept going to treatment and kept, stealing and kept getting in trouble. And so, there was definitely some guilt involved. Ultimately, I know that, the best way that I can kind of deal with that now is to stay sober and try and make him proud, etc. But so I get back to New York, and literally the second day I'm back, I just worked a shift. I was still working at Nobu at the time. I just worked a shift, and my girlfriend and I were living in Hell's Kitchen. And I remember like it was yesterday. We lived on 51st and 9th Avenue, right on the corner, right above this restaurant. And I'm going up into my building, and sitting right outside of it is this kid sitting there with a sign that says HIV positive, and he's on the nod. He's like blatantly on dope. And that was like a sign. It was a crossroads. It was kind of like, I can just walk into my apartment and ignore this guy, or, do what I did, which was like, yo, what's good? I'll buy you one. Let's go. And that's what I did. And it turned out that the dude, his name was George. He's this Puerto Rican guy who I became very close with.
Right.
He became like my best friend. He lived right over on 55th between 10th and 11th. So literally like a 6-minute walk to his place. And, he always had uptown and downtown is what we called it. I've heard dope referred to so many things, boy and girl, but with him it was uptown and downtown. And I'd gotten into, the last time I'd been using it was speedballs, and so that's what I got into again, and it got bad quick. So this was in August of 2014.
Did he have any fancy names for speedballs, or did he just say speedballs? Did he call it speedballs, or was he like crosstown? What did he?
No. He would just call it uptown and downtown. I'd say, hey, I'd text him, hey, do you have both? And he always did, because he used it himself, and I hope he's still alive. He had like this terrible breathing condition. He would do his dope before he cut it, and he would have to go to the hospital like on a regular basis because his breathing would stop. And I can't even tell you the amount of times that I went up and met him at the hospital to cop. He would always be laid up at forget the hospital name. It's the one up at like 59th between like 8th and 9th.
It's like St. Luke's.
No, it's not St. Luke's. It's right across from
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt, yep. He would always be there in like the emergency.
Because I detoxed in Roosevelt.
Area.
I detoxed there once. It was some experimental detox. But he would bring his dope when he got taken in. How would that work?
Bring it with him.
That's funny.
I don't exactly know. His wife was kind of in on it, so she would either go and she would bring it up to him,
right.
or I don't know exactly. But he was pretty big. I mean, he was the type of guy who always had it. And some of the figures that he hung out with definitely seemed like they were like gang related. I mean, he was an older guy, really nice. He had kids and stuff. but he was definitely like he wasn't the plug, but he was right below it. Dealing to a lot of people, and still the best cocaine I've ever had access to in my life.
Now, who is the? Could you help me with this? Because this is, I mean, I'm old and I haven't done drugs in a little bit, a little while. Nobody ever said plug when I was doing drugs. Nobody ever said that. What is the plug? What is exactly the plug?
Think of like plug in and outlet, and the plug would be like the
hook, the hookup, the higher up.
Yeah, exactly, the hook. Yeah.
So the kid is never the plug.
Never heard plug before?
No, of course I've heard it.
Behind on the lingo, man.
No kidding, but I don't like it. Like on these heroin memes, and they're all like, when the plug, blah 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 blah. I think it's a good sign that I never used the word plug, because it's like,
yeah.
But I bet you 4 years ago people were saying plug. And he wasn't the plug. George wasn't the plug. It was George's plug that was the plug.
Yes, correct. But he always was well stashed, and he was always on. So I'd get off from a shift at Nobu and go meet him at 12:30 at night, and then try and go lay in bed with my my girlfriend, being all I know that you've shot cocaine before, have you not?
I have.
Yeah, so trying to do that and then go and do anything normal was not easy. And then actually a few months ago I was doing that while I was bartending, and it was quite torturous. I mean, just like the worst feelings ever, like going to the bathroom and doing a shot and then coming back and trying to talk to people and certain drinks. It just doesn't work out very well.
It's terrible.
So anyways,
but when you would shoot coke, you wouldn't always shoot dope too. You would sometimes just shoot the coke.
Well, what I was doing then was I would shoot the coke and then do the dope after, but because I was on methadone, the dope was not as effective, and I would always overshoot the mark, so the coke would always outweigh it.
Right.
And like I mentioned, the coke was really good, and so I could never get it right. I mean, even doing it multiple times a day and for years, I'd always overshoot the mark because I'd get excited. I'd do the first shot, I'd be okay, and then immediately do another one. I mean, I'm the type where I'll get whatever I get, and then do shot after shot after shot in succession until it's gone. Which I imagine when intravenous cocaine users out there probably can relate to that, or crack smokers. I mean, same sort of thing. It's like you just you get it in you, and you can't stop till it's all gone and all the money's gone, and that's all she wrote.
Whenever I would shoot coke, it would make me so uncomfortable that I would need the dope and as many pills as I could take immediately, because like the coke just made me so uncomfortable. Chris was like he would get so uncomfortable too, but he lived for that IV coke. He would never shut up about that IV coke, and I know before he died he had gotten back to his IV coke. It was all he wanted to do, and he still, when he would describe it, he would describe how much he hated it at the same time. Which is funny. It's just such misery.
It is, but you know what? It's funny because I've talked to other people too, and I remember talking to Chris about that as well. And other people have been drawn back to using because of that allure of that coke rush, which next to the meth rush, which I experienced in New York a little bit, I kind of started to get into meth there until I couldn't find it anymore. There's nothing like it. I mean, it's the ultimate, in my opinion. But then after 20 seconds, like you mentioned, you're so uncomfortable that you then, or at least I would then do another shot to get that initial feeling to try and make the other feeling go away, but then it would compound on itself to make you then more uncomfortable. I mean, it's just a treacherous, downward spiral. And so, needless to say, I got started and I couldn't stop. And my poor ex-girlfriend, Ashley, who, I still love, and actually we didn't talk for a whole year, but we recently started talking again, just as friends. And, we were together for about 5 years, living together, and had a dog. And, we're building a life together, and that's something that I gave away, because of my use, and I know I've shared with you before just how much I miss New York and how much I want to get back there, and I understand the importance of building a foundation here and getting all my ducks in a row before I do come back, but it is still my goal. But anyways,
poor Ashley. Ashley didn't know what she was getting herself into, right?
Dude, she did not. And the thing is I tried to be honest with her from like the beginning. Like I remember the morning I got on methadone, I moved to New York strung out, and I didn't know where to get drugs. So I was going up to Harlem, and I'd gotten ripped off a couple times, and then I finally found this guy who had it, and then he wound up getting arrested. Like I gave him my money one day, and he went out to go meet, so he was kind of a middleman type of thing. And the reason I know he didn't just rip me off is because I wound up getting in touch with his girlfriend, and I went over to their apartment, and she was trying to prove it to me that he hadn't been. So he either got arrested or it was this a really elaborate con, which I suppose it could have been. But that was sort of the last straw, and I did some research into methadone, and so I was waiting to start. Like I had to go one day and give blood, and it takes a couple of days. Not always. I think at some clinics you can go and get started the same day. I know that you were on it back in the day. I'll never forget your 9/11 story on 9/11 when you had to get through and go dose, man. You got to get the dose.
Got to get the dose.
Got to get it. But
the funniest thing about the methadone clinic is that it's like a joke because you're getting on methadone because you can't afford to be on dope. Maybe you want to get clean. Maybe you can't handle the hustle. Maybe you don't have enough money. But the second they open the door into the clinic, it's like every dealer you've ever seen is in the clinic. You know what I mean? It's like the clinic is like way more opportunity of scoring than your whole life times 10 outside the clinic. So it's like it's impossible.
100%. Yeah, I mean, there were so many. I was going to the clinic down on Broadway Lafayette, off that subway stop there. Yeah. And there's still people out there right now around there looking for sticks, as they call them.
No, that was my relapse, man. I came back from Los Angeles, and I was with Linda. I was with my partner now. And I was sober, and she was pregnant, and she had bought me the Nikki Sixx diaries for Christmas that year, the Heroin diaries. Okay. And I hadn't been off of. I was still smoking weed. I hadn't been off of dope or pills for a while. It was for a very short time. And I'm reading that fucking Nikki Sixx Heroin Diaries book. And I worked on Houston Street, and I get the N train from Astoria to Prince Street, and I'm walking down the street, and there's just a gaggle of Methadonians. And I'm like, a gaggle of Methadonians. I wonder what's going on. And I just hear, sticks. And I was like, oh, I love sticks. And I was like, I could buy a couple sticks. And I went up and I bought a couple 2 milligram, and most people say bars, outside of methadone, New York City. But I was like, I was like, give me a couple sticks, man. And that was the beginning of the end for me, But yeah.
No shit.
Oh yeah, it was on sticks on fucking Prince Street from the Methadonians from Broadway Lafayette.
That's so funny, man. Those were my people back then.
You were probably there. You were probably in the circle.
Probably fucking there.
So funny.
I probably was in that crowd of Methadonians. I've never heard that term. That's so funny.
Oh, dude, Methadonians. I think there's a documentary called The Methadonians, and I never saw it. It's like on my list to see things, and I don't know if you ever heard a Dopey episode with my friend Todd, but Todd was like one of my best friends, and I went to college with him, and I used with him constantly, and we got on heroin together. We drove across the country a million times together. Todd actually died 6 weeks before Chris this summer, and I
remember hearing about that. Yeah. And
me and Todd would wander around Lower Manhattan, and I would be like, "Dude, check it out," and he'd be like, "What?" And I'd be like, "Those are Methadonians." And he'd be like, "So?" And I'd go, "Come with me." And we would start walking behind him. And that's when I started doing my methadone imitation, because you'd hear him go, I don't want to piss today. I can't believe they're going to make me piss if I don't get my take-homes. I can't believe it. And Todd's just like, dude, what's wrong with you? I was like, dude, this is the funniest thing ever. Like, all I want to do is like we did a little segment on Dopey called the Methadone Minute, but like it involved me hanging out at the methadone clinic for Dopey, and it just seemed like too risky for me to do that at this point. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, but it's still like the entertainment value of a methadonian just telling about their day is fucking off the charts.
Dude, that is so funny, and I appreciate the enthusiasm. That does sound like I like the idea, but I could see how that could go bad quickly. Yeah, because you never know what's going to happen in those situations with those people. And that's a very unique sector in that, being in New York City, being on
Hey, Don, wait.
the street.
Let me ask you something. The audio was really louder a minute ago. What happened?
Maybe I wasn't talking. I lit a cigarette. I'm smoking a cigarette out the window, so maybe I'm not talking in the phone well enough.
That's all right. Keep going. You were talking about the unique circumstances of a Methadonian.
Well, of a Methadonian in general, but I think in that part of the country, being in Manhattan, being so close to tourists from all over the world, is like the juxtaposition is so great that you have this clinic with people, and some of them are some people on methadone are trying to get their lives together. I'm not, and I was on it for years. I'm not talking down to anyone, but there's also people who are there who have they have no plan to really clean up and are just kind of going to be on methadone forever and trying to keep a Xanax habit going and all this stuff, and it's interesting, and it can be comical, and it also really sad,
Oh yeah.
But but it takes what it takes, and so anyways, just to get back, I'll kind of finish off my story. So I burned everything down. My girlfriend kicked me out. I wound up moving to Brooklyn. With a dude that I'd gone to high school with. We got an apartment, and I'm really good at like getting clean and kind of getting shit together. And then like after a couple weeks, once I've got another job, because I lost the last one because of whatever, I then pick up again and throw it all away. But I'm usually pretty good at like last ditch kind of like pulling it together when I need to. And it's part of the reason why I've kind of been using as long as I have. But so I lasted in Brooklyn for a year, and then it got to the point where my using was just out of control. I hadn't paid rent in a couple months, and literally a family friend that I met in AA actually when I was 18, that I still talk to this day, flew out to New York, rented a car, and got me with all my shit and drove me back to Michigan. I mean, and he did it because he said if I didn't do this, you were going to be coming back to Michigan in a body bag. And the reality of overdose and death is something that I've always thought. I think every addict thinks it's not going to be me. I'm sure that Chris thought the same thing. Your friend Todd. I mean, millions of people out there, who've overdosed. Nobody thinks it's going to be them, and then it is. And I was just so lost and so, it's just in outer space. And so I got back here and,
let me ask you something before you finish that thought. Was there any sort of like crash and burn bottom, or were you just like skimming the bottom in Brooklyn, just still with the speedballs, still with shooting coke? Were you still working? Like, what was the actual end of it?
So I've always, the whole time I kept a job, because I've served forever and had worked at Nobu, with that on my resume, like a lot of restaurants would hire me, and being in Manhattan, that there's 10,000 restaurants, there were plenty of bridges to burn. So I would I was keeping jobs, but I was spending all my money on drugs. I was getting fired with more frequency. So like the my time at jobs was getting less and less. And I was miserable. I was suicidal. I wanted so badly to be with my ex, and she was moving on, and I was just a mess, and I just could not pull myself out. And I was still going to the clinic and pissing dirty constantly, and they were trying to get me to go to treatment, and they were going to stop dosing me because I wasn't staying clean. I mean, at a certain point at the clinic, even they say, if you can't get it together, you have to go to treatment. And I didn't want to go. I'd had a couple abscesses. I mean, just awful. But that whole time I was trying to put out the facade that I had it together. And, I can shower and comb my hair and put on some nice clothes. And even when I'm strung out, look like I've got it together to a certain, to a certain extent, and that also has been a reason why I've just stayed high for so long.
Right, you're an accomplished bullshit artist, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, years of practice, and you learn the tricks of the trade. But I just got tired, and so I moved back to Michigan. I was fucking miserable. Didn't want to be here. Wanted to be in New York. Felt like I had really failed, and I just was on methadone for a little while. I stopped using, but then, I got a job here in Michigan and started right back at it. And I was going, to Detroit, where there was overdoses happening like daily. And, I'd somehow acquired a car and was driving to Detroit and like nodding out on the freeway, and wound up getting pulled over. Got put in jail because I didn't have insurance, and had syringes and drugs in the car that they in the center console that they didn't find. I mean, I just kept getting like break after break after break, and then finally, it wasn't even anything that happened specifically. It was just like a series of really bad stuff. I decided to go to treatment and to get off methadone, and so I went to Sacred Heart in this last April, and stayed for 30 days and got off methadone, and then moved out to Ann Arbor here, where I am currently. I moved out here afterwards, moved into a Dawn Farm 3/4 house. Dawn Farm is like the local treatment center out here, and it's actually, it's on a farm, and you look after the animals, and you make all your own food, and it's a pretty exceptional treatment center. I went through it back in 2011, and it's a longer term, so you're there for 3 months. So I went to their transitional housing, and it turned out my house manager was a guy that I used to get high with and used to work with in Ann Arbor, and actually used to live with, and he helped kind of support me, and I, there was a lot of people still around. There's still a lot of people here that are clean and sober, that were clean and sober back in 2011 when I lived here, or if they're not, they've come back. So I had that built-in support system. But coming off methadone, I was so sick. Like they brought me down 8 milligrams a day while I was in treatment, and then I was off for 2 days, and then I did 5 days of Subutex. But for 30 days afterwards, and it literally got worse as time went on. Yeah. There was a whole week where I felt like I was like a 90-year-old man with terrible arthritis. Like when they talk about it coming out of your bones, I mean, I experienced it. It was fucking awful.
What was your highest dose that you came off of?
I came off 120 milligrams when I went into Sacred Heart. I've been as high as like 160,
right,
but I was on 120 at Sacred Heart. So it's a pretty high dose, and I've been on it for 5 years, so my body just didn't know what the fuck to do. I couldn't eat, no appetite, but somehow I got through it. I lasted a month until I got a job and started and had money in my pocket and had a means to get high, and so I took a Lyft down to Detroit because I didn't have my car, and started taking like daily Lyft lifts to Detroit, and what I was doing is, if I didn't have money, I would book the Lyft driver, and I would say, listen, if I give you a really nice tip, will you, if I give you a $60 tip, will you give me $20 in cash back? Because the Lyft account was attached to my mom's credit card.
Right.
Which
classic scam.
Pretty classic scam. Yeah, I mean, I'm paying her back for that now, finally. But for the time, I accomplished what I needed to. But so very quickly, I got kicked out of transitional because I was using. This was this summer. This was like June, and I was actually homeless for like 4 days. I was sleeping outside of a church, and then sleeping outside of a church downtown Ann Arbor, walking to the law library, getting high in the bathroom in the morning, and then going to work. And I was working as a server, and it only lasted, I think, for 4 nights. And then what did I even do then? How did I don't know. Oh, I got into another 3/4 house through this buddy the guy who saved me from New York. He foot the bill for this 3/4 house, but I got in and it was one of these 3/4 houses where everyone was using. And so now I kept using, but I had a roof over my head. But by this time I had gotten some connects in Ann Arbor and was back at it, and was right back where I had been in New York, a year and a half prior, where I was just waiting tables just to stay high, and I was fucking miserable. And so it was around the summer that I started to go back to meetings and really giving things a shot, and had put a couple weeks together. And then about a month and a half ago, about 5 weeks ago, I had 2 weeks clean, and I had gotten this new restaurant job because I had lost the other one. And,
wait, when was this?
And pardon?
This was when?
This was 5 weeks ago. So okay. I've got 33 days clean today, and this was just before then. And I had a couple weeks when I went into work, and this girl that I'd kind of been fooling around with a little bit was prescribed Xanax, and we were like putting our stuff away, and she like went into her purse and took one, and I asked her what it was. I was like, what's that? And she told me, and she wound up giving me one, and so I took a full bar, and it was like 9:30 in the morning. It was a brunch shift, and this place I was working does a pretty big brunch crowd, and so basically after like a half hour, I was blacked out trying to wait on these tables.
Yeah.
And, and I know that you, being a server, I'm sure that you've done it high before. It's not fun, and people were not happy because I kept forgetting their coffee.
Waiting tables on benzos is the worst. That's like the worst drug. I think maybe waiting tables stoned is worse than waiting tables on benzos because you're paranoid. When you know what I mean? Because you're like, do they know I'm high? At least on benzos, you're relaxed, but you forget everything, though. It's ridiculous.
Right. You're forgetting stuff, but you're not worried about them finding out. But people knew something was up, and by the end of the shift, my coworkers were like, well, what the fuck is going on with you? And I actually work with a few people in recovery who knew that I was on drugs, and I claimed that I had a migraine. The classic excuse. I just have a really bad migraine, and I was supposed to work that night, and they sent me home, and that was the end of that job. So that was 5 weeks ago, and that night I decided, since I had already relapsed, to get some heroin and some coke, which I did, and then that was the last time that I used. So the next day, I went to a meeting and just got totally honest, and got a sponsor shortly thereafter, a guy that I've known for a while who, is really into the book and got going on the steps. And I've been to at least a meeting every day since. Luckily I wasn't using like enough to where there was much of a physical withdrawal or anything. It was more just emotional. But, after a little more than a month, I feel like a new person, and I got a new job, which, somehow, just by the grace of God, this girl reached out to me through LinkedIn, and I'm actually doing business development for the startup company. So something totally different that I'm enjoying, that I can take initiative and feel like I'm building something.
And you're not leaving the restaurant with cash.
That too, yes. I get paid once a month, which I started like the day after they got paid. So I've been broke for 3.5 weeks, which has also sort of been a godsend. Everything kind of fell into place, and it's all there for me to just embrace. I'm my own worst enemy by far, and I'm just trying to stay out of the way and just kind of let God take the wheel, as they say. As corny as that sounds, it makes a big difference. The prayer and the reaching out, trying to be of service. I've got a couple commitments at the meetings, and it's making a big difference. And so, for anyone out there who is struggling, there's a lot to be said for finding a meeting and going, and even if it's not to the whole group, just finding somebody there to be honest with, and just tell them what's going on, and asking for help can be profound, and then letting that person help you.
Totally.
The first week was definitely tough, but now, in all honesty, I really haven't even thought about getting high for the last 3 weeks.
Why do you think? Well, Don, why do you think that is?
I think, partly it's been I've been broke. I mean, so money is definitely a trigger. When I have money, it's easy for me to justify thinking I can just do it once, which I've never gotten high once in my whole life. It always just starts that cycle over again. That being said, there has been a couple instances in the last month where I have had the means to get high, but I think just the daily surrender and sort of the meeting, certainly, because I even throughout all the years, I've never been consistent with meetings. Like, I do enjoy going, but I would go when I wanted to, and now I have meetings put in place that I go to every night. I've got commitments at 3 of them. That's where all my people are, and so I think just surrendering to the program, surrendering to a higher power, just that sort of giving up. And
well, giving up is critical. But let me ask you something. Let me ask you something that might offend you. Do you ever get worried that you're bullshitting yourself? Because you're such a bullshit artist, and you do, I don't know you that well, but I know that you've been around this thing for 13 years, actively, undoing it every time you're doing it, picking up the lingo every time, swearing yourself off. Like, at some point, I mean, and you bullshit yourself, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And that's scary, isn't it?
It is, I mean, and on some level, I may very well be bullshitting myself. I think.
Well, I'm not saying you're bullshitting yourself. I'm saying, like, you sound great. And, like, when I talked to you the other day, and you were talking about, and I'm going to mess up the quote, but, like, I hear from people, like, that listen to Dopey all the time, and they complain that that I talk about AA too much. I talk about 12-step too much, and these are people. Okay. These are people that aren't clean. You know what I mean? And maybe they don't need to be clean. You know what I mean? And maybe they do. But like you said to me the other day, rarely. What's the quote? Rarely have we seen somebody trying to do this wholeheartedly fail. What's the actual quote? Do you know it?
It's rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path.
Exactly. So, and I think that's critical for these people who are listening to the show and wondering why they're using. It's because they're not really following the path. And I was just like you. I bullshitted myself forever. And in the end, I just needed to get clean. Like, I couldn't live with it anymore. And I was like, fuck it. I'm going to find, I was just like you. I didn't want to work steps. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to fucking do any of it. But in the end, I needed to get clean. So I said, I'll just do whatever you tell me to do. Because I knew that if I took suggestions, if I actually did it, that maybe things could change. Because I had never done it. And then when I did take suggestions, things did change.
Well, and I think that's exactly right. That's it in a nutshell, and that's where I'm at with it too. I've spent 13 years getting high and in and out of treatment and hurting people and hurting myself, and been shown this program but never done it, never taken the suggestions. And I'm finally at a point where I'm 30 years old, and it's like it's not cute anymore. It's not fun anymore. And I'm ready to have a life. I'm sick of never having money, of never having consistency, not having any prospects in general. And so for me, it's just finally gotten to a place like you just mentioned, where I have to be willing to just do whatever the fuck I'm told, regardless of how I feel about it. And that's something that I'm trying to be cognizant of as well. Is the way that I feel doesn't really mean shit. I'm gonna have adverse reactions to a lot of things, as far as getting up and going to work, going to a meeting, paying a bill, whatever the fuck it is. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. I just have to do it. And I'm finding that by taking these little actions, taking these little suggestions, it gets easier, and you start to build momentum. And if I do fuck up and don't, follow through on a phone call, or don't, whatever it is, I don't throw in the towel like maybe I would have in the past. I just say, okay, I'm not perfect. What can I do now, though, that's going to bring me, move me forward? It's just about having a life today. And I've seen so many people, who have lives literally beyond their wildest dreams. And I used to hear that in the program, and it pissed me off. And,
yeah.
But
it's like, what the fuck? What the fuck is this guy dreaming about? That his life is that good? It's like, who the fuck is he kidding?
Well, right. But I think that what they mean by that is that when you get clean, or as I've been clean, things have occurred in my life that certainly would not have happened had I not been clean. Undoubtedly, but
Don, before you say another thing, my life is beyond my wildest dreams at this point.
There we go.
It is. I mean, I got my family back. We had another baby. We bought a house. Like, Dopey is fucking sailing along nicely in a way that I like. And it's all because of my recovery. I lived like shit for 41 years, and I said to myself, 41 years yielded nothing but misery. What could 40 years without drugs yield me? And I'm at 3.5 years in, or 3 years and 3 years and 3.5 months, 3 years and 4 months, almost 3.5 years, and my life is better than it's literally ever been, ever.
There you go.
I'm living proof, as they say. And I hate that shit. It gets me. It's disturbing, like the dogma of it, but it's the truth,
Yes, and you're so right. And I think it just gets to a place where you have to just I had to get over myself. I had to get over this entitled sort of.
Right.
That's not for me. I just today. I just have to be like part of the crowd and just do what adults do and do what recovering addicts, in the program do, and life will get better. And I have faith in that. I know that from as you just said, from people like yourself, other people I know, and even if I don't have a life, even if this doesn't amount to a life beyond my wildest dreams, I know it's going to be better than the way I've been living the last 13. I know that.
But then the best part is, if it isn't, it's not like they stopped selling fucking coke and dope. If it's fucking terrible, go fucking out, do your thing. You know what I mean? But it won't be. That's not going to be the case.
Exactly, man.
Well,
yep.
I'm very, very pleased to have you back on. You definitely brought the dopey, as we say. I think you brought the dopey the most dopey we've had since we've lost, Chris. And I appreciate that a lot. And, like, I think you should come back on and we should tell waiter stories. Like, we didn't touch on waiter stories. There's so many good waiter stories. But I want to do a couple more things before we get off, and time is a-wasting, my friend. First...
Yes, I know. I blab and blab, yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. I think a lot of people are going to benefit from what you said. Not to mention, it's a fucking hardcore fucking Dopey story. And Dopey needs... If Dopey doesn't have Dopey stories, then what the hell is it? So...
Good point.
So I'm on Twitter, you know, and our Twitter following is very small, but incredibly committed and loving. Like, I think of the Dopey Twitter followers as the Green Berets of the Dopey Nation, because these guys are like, they just are very supportive, and it's very, very, like, sweet on Twitter. But one dude, okay, I can't think of his Twitter handle at the moment, but he said that the Dopey stories that we tell are like hipster stories, and that he's a real crackhead, and that he couldn't believe, like, because I told a story about, like, being on dope, and, like, my solution was to get ibogaine, so I had ibogaine shipped to Canada, and I had to drive to Montreal to get it, and he's like, what kind of bougie hipster, like, treats their heroin addiction by driving to Canada? Like, I need that hardcore Dopey. So he sent in this crazy story, and I'm going to play it. So hold on for 1 sec. I'm going to play this story, okay?
Okay.
Do you think Dopey is very hipstery, by the way?
No, I think it's a good mix of the hardcore with
entitlements. With entitlement.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a little, but it's, you know, it's I think it's got just the right amount. I think it's just right. I mean, you know, you're not going to be able to please everybody all the time. No,
that's true. But let's play this guy's thing. His name is Al, and here's Al's story.
Okay, Dopey Nation. This is Al M. from Pennsylvania. My clean date's 2/13/12. This is my Dopey story. Okay, so early 2000s, we're out in the streets doing what we do. My drug of choice was crack cocaine. So, you know what we do for drugs. Anyway, one day I gave a drug dealer a ride to a hotel. He said he was going to pay me to give him a ride. He went in the hotel room, never came back out. So weeks later, we see this guy on what we used to call the set, which was the main strip where all the drugs were sold. So I see the guy, and he happily pays me. As soon as he gives me the crack, I look over his shoulder, and like 3 cops are running towards him. I quickly throw it in my mouth. He pulls out this big old bag of crack and throws it on the ground. I remember looking at that bag of crack on the ground like, damn, I should just pick it up and run. Anyway, so everybody there is arrested and taken to a holding cell. Now, I had the crack in my mouth that he had given me, which I quickly swallowed once I was handcuffed. Okay, so we get to the jail. I have no warrants at the time and everything, nothing like that, so I'm released. I go home and I'm thinking, man, I really wanted to get high. I'm thinking like, damn. Then I remember a guy telling me where he had strained his shit and smoked it. So, being the good junkie that I am, I figured, hell, might as well give it a try. So I proceeded to take a shit in the toilet, pulled the shit out of the toilet, and broke up the shit looking for a piece of clear plastic with crack in it. So I finally get what I think is crack. It was probably a peanut or a piece of corn. I get out my pipe, which was a radio antenna at the time with burnt wire in it. I can almost taste it now. So I get out my device and load it up with shit and light it and try to smoke it. I'll never ever forget what that was like. That was years before I got clean. Of course, I wasn't done, but it's amazing what excuse me. It's amazing what we'll do for that next one. Once I did that and realized that I didn't get it, I, again, later on that day, took a shit and broke up my shit in my hand, looking for what I thought was going to be a pristine, clear piece of plastic with a white rock in it, undamaged. Again, not sure what I smoked. I'm sure it was shit, though, to be honest. I don't know. I just wrote in earlier and had said that the show kind of seemed like hipster. Not to be misunderstood. I really love the show, and I do listen to it quite often. It's you guys or you now by yourself are putting out good stuff, and I'm sure it's helping save somebody's life. So yo, man, just that's my Dopey story, and stay strong out there. Peace out, Dopey Nation. R.I.P. to Chris. Toodles.
So that was Al. I love that story. That's such a classic Dopey crack eating story, and that's like a real addict, you know what I'm saying? Who can admit, it's a real addict in recovery with balls that can admit going through his shit not once but twice. You know what I'm saying? That's serious.
Yes. That is some serious shit, and then the pure disappointment and just torture of not getting anything out of it. After going through that and then loading it up and literally smoking shit and getting no euphoric effect whatsoever must have just been so just incomprehensibly demoralizing.
Right, but that might be something that helped him get to the next place, because that's the kind of shame and degradation that you really fucking absorb. You know what I mean? When you go through your shit to smoke some crack that isn't crack, that it's a piece of corn or something. It's like, that's the best thing when he said it might have been corn. Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah.
So I love that.
That's some powerlessness. Yeah, and that goes to show that the range of the Dopey Nation.
Well, he's
hardcore, and
he's trying to bring it. He's trying to show me how hardcore it is for some people. And I'll tell you though, Don, it's just as hardcore for you. I mean, you might not be sifting through your shit. You might come from a world of cottages and 1,000-pill Vicodin bottles, but like, you've been through it, man. You've earned your stripes, no matter where you're from or whatever. Like you have your pain just like I do, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I appreciate Al's point, but like, all of us go through a lot of stuff. Like, I wouldn't wish my terrible shit on anybody. And something this guy I used to work with would always say, I used to talk about, like, when I wasn't back with my family and I was still struggling with drugs, I would just talk about how miserable I was. And this guy would always say, well, if everybody took their problems and threw it in the middle of a circle, you'd always pick up your own problems. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I love that expression. Because they're yours.
Yeah.
You've earned them.
Yeah.
You understand them, Now, before we go, we invented this little game on Dopey. It's called the stache word, okay? And on the stache word, we have some words, right? and I'm going to describe the word, and you're going to tell me what I'm describing. We're going to play the game for exactly 1 minute. We've only played it one time before with this writer, recovery guru named Anna David, and she only got 3. So you're going to be the second person to play the stache word, and we'll see how you do. Are you ready?
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's do it.
All right, hold on. Here we go. The first stache word is when you're using drugs intravenously and you can have an infection that can swell up on... Huh?
Abscess.
Yes. It is the psychoactive substance in marijuana.
THC.
Yes. When taking LSD or mushrooms, you are going on a...
Trip.
Yes. Gay people in the 70s used this drug up their nose. It was also known as poppers. You can pass if you want.
Coke, meth?
No. Okay. It's Klonopin, Xanax, Ativan. These are all...
Benzodiazepine.
Yes. An alcoholic tends to develop this problem in their liver.
Cirrhosis.
Yes. It's a long glass tube often used to smoke marijuana.
Pipe, a bowl, bong.
Yes. When people use sprays, inhalants, they are...
Puffing.
Yeah, we're done. Yeah, you killed Anna David.
Was Anna the one that was on just the last episode who wrote that book, Party Girl?
Yeah, that was Anna. Yes.
Okay, I haven't listened to it yet, but I need to listen to it.
Yeah, listen to it. Let me know what you think. That you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's pretty good.
Nice. Yeah.
What I really need to do is
one?
amyl nitrate.
Oh, I wouldn't have gotten that for a while.
Yeah, that's an
What do you
old...
need to do, though?
We need to get sound effects in the game. I need buzzers and whistles and shit. Like, see, that doesn't really work. This I like that, and I need we need to, Dopey needs a lot of work in order to be what it's supposed to be. Especially, I'm sitting in my attic alone on the phone, holding the phone up to the mic. So Dopey needs some work. And but thank you very much for coming on, Don. You're awesome.
Hey, man, it's an honor, and Dopey is awesome, man, and it's your baby, and and I know that you've had to deal with doing it without Chris and going through all that, and so you're doing great, man, and keep it going, and yeah, it's an honor to be on, and I hope to get on again sometime soon.
Right on, man. All right, have a good night. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right, brother.
All right.
Sounds good, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, man.
Toodles.
So that was classic Dopey guest Don. Sounds like he's on the right foot, and let's hope he stays that way. And some serious Dopey shit there. Now, I was gonna do some, ending thoughts, some sort of op-ed piece kind of thing, if you will. But instead, I was talking to my friend Justin, and Justin's on the phone right now. Say what's up.
What's up?
There's Justin, my very good friend who co-wrote Good So Bad and has worked on a million things. He's a big shot in the lower Manhattan. He doesn't like me to talk about too much what he does. He's very nervous about the Dopey Nation finding him. But Justin and I were talking. Justin's a huge reggae fan. And there's a great development in the world of reggae that I think the Dopey Nation should know about. And Justin, why don't you inform the Dopey Nation of what recently just happened?
Well, the greatest living reggae artist, Buju Banton, was just released from prison.
Okay.
And repatriated to Jamaica.
Repatriation?
Yes.
I never knew what repatriation was.
It means return to your homeland.
So, okay, good. So why, and Buju Banton had gone to jail because of what? I think that was some sort of serious Dopey story.
He was set up by federal agents in a drug deal. He was on a plane coming back from a show, I think, in Spain, and a federally paid informant happened to be sitting next to him in first class on this plane. Made friends with him on the and then pursued him for months or even over a year afterwards to try to get him to do a drug deal. And finally, Buju agreed to do it. And, of course, the minute that they had him on tape agreeing to do it, the agent swooped in and arrested him. They tried him. I think the first time it ended in a mistrial. They tried him again. And then they put him in prison for almost 10 years.
Well, the weirdest part about that story is, like you said, you're talking about, one of the biggest reggae stars in the history of reggae music, possibly the most influential dancehall artist ever, Rastafarian, leader of people. People loved Buju Banton and worshipped him, and yet he agreed to do this crazy coke deal. Like, me and you had that conversation before. Why would he have ever agreed?
The strange thing to me, Dave, is all of the things you said, except for the last part, right? Great artist, one of the greatest living, musicians, certainly the greatest living reggae artist.
Better than Beanie Man.
A great hero, of course, great hero in Jamaica and around the world to reggae fans. Doesn't the United States government have better things to do than to trap him in a drug deal? It's crazy. It's totally crazy. But thank God he's out now. He's back home, and I'm sure he'll be making music soon. It's been a pretty bad 10 years for reggae music as far as I'm concerned. Vybz Kartel has been locked up for most of that time too, but he's in jail in Jamaica. So he actually records music from his prison and still actually has the most #1 hits of anyone in Jamaica.
Well, why did they lock up Vybz Kartel?
Well, he actually killed someone. I mean, he's actually an actual criminal. So
nobody co-opted him into the murder? No U.S. government officials showed up and said...
Oh, no. I mean, the person who got killed probably was some other gangster, but he's an actual murderer.
All right. Well, we're gonna end Dopey with some Buju Banton to celebrate Buju's freedom. I don't believe that he was necessarily set up, but I do believe he's great.
Well, just read about it.
Well, I can't read that stuff. I can't pay attention. I don't care.
Well, then don't talk about what you don't know.
Well, that's why I had you on.
Do you think anyone in the Dopey Nation are there many reggae fans in the Dopey Nation? I'd be interested to know that.
Well, okay, Dopey Nation, if you're a reggae fan, write us an email. Let us know if you think there's a greater living Jamaican reggae star than Buju Banton. Let us know. Supercat's still alive, but Buju Banton's bigger than Supercat.
Way better.
Better? Song fee song better, or just overall better?
Supercat is crazy now.
All right, regardless. I want to read a couple emails before you get off the phone because I get a kick out of this kind of thing.
All right.
This is more Dopey business than Buju Banton, but I figure, he got picked up for selling coke and went away for selling coke, so it's worth telling on Dopey. Anyway, here's an email that I just got from Norway. Okay, you ready? Justin, you're listening?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Now, Justin listened to every episode of Dopey, but he's not up to the last episode 164. And this is about 164. You ready, Justin?
Yep.
He says, Dave, the last episode, 164, was by far the worst Dopey episode ever. It was not funny.
I thought 163 was actually the worst.
The worst?
Well, in the bottom 5.
The bottom 5?
That in my book, yes.
Dude, the bottom 5 is always growing for you, too. You're always finding another episode.
There's a new population in the bottom 5.
You're always trying to squeeze another one into the bottom 5. Anyway, it hurts, man. That doesn't feel good. But anyway, let me continue.
You were on a roll for a while there.
Were there some top 5 ones in the past few?
I think so. I'd have to think about it, but probably.
Well, I think you're a jerk. But let me continue. Blah, blah, blah. All right. Your guest, Anna, and yourself went on and on about how to succeed in the podcast business. Please stop.
That sounds really boring.
Huh?
I mean, that sounds really boring if you were
talking
shut
up. You don't comment on it. Don't comment until you hear the episode. Just listen to the email. The conversation about the name of her podcast seemed to go on forever. Please stop now. That's 2 please stops from this fucking Norwegian. I understand that you want to create a successful podcast, but this is not the way to go. like Roger knows how to make a fucking successful podcast, Justin. Let me continue. I understand. Okay, but this is not the way to go. If you continue with this approach, please rename Dopey to How to Make a Podcast the Podcast, so I know when to unsubscribe. I think you should unsubscribe now, dude. Fuck it.
I think this guy sounds very reasonable to me.
Let me finish. According to Live Science, there are 21 million people. He can't even fucking talk English right. There are 21 million people with substance abuse problems in the U.S. If you calculate that each of these addicts have 5 close relatives and friends, more than 100 million people is affected. Listen, Roger, it's are affected.
Well, that's faulty logic there.
Let me continue. By drugs in their day-to-day life. So there you go, Dave. There is your audience. You are welcome. No doubt that you can live of a good, dopey podcast. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. Anyway, again, my wish is that you continue with the crazy dope stories because
yes, I agree.
Just, Justin, shut up, man. I'm reading the fucking email. Because they are entertaining. However, the best moments in your podcast is when you dig deep into understanding and explaining addiction. Please, Dave, dig deeper.
Also good.
Why do people relapse? What was their thoughts? Weeks, days, hours before they start using again? At what point and why do addicts decide to go to rehab? Why do some stay clean and others do not? What feelings and thoughts do the relatives and friends of addicts have? Both when the addict...
That was exactly what's good about the show.
You're so that's not what's good about the show. They should listen to another show. Anyway, both when the addict is using and when they are not. I really think that by digging deeper into these issues, you could expand your audience outside the junkie population and maybe pursue... he says pursuit, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in that. Maybe pursuit.
How well do you speak Norwegian?
I don't. But I'm not writing some Norwegian podcast host and telling him that he sucks. Anyway, and maybe pursue your carrier. I think he's got some kind of translation program. Pursue your carrier as a professional podcaster. Stay strong in Toodles. Best of luck and regards, Roger. Now, you agree with Roger, Justin?
Yeah, almost 100%. The only thing I wouldn't agree with is that the math was faulty because what he's not taking into account is, let's just say there are 21 million addicts in the U.S.
Right.
And they each have 5 family and friends.
Yes.
Some of the 5 family and friends are probably also addicts, so the number is not 100 million.
Listen,
other than that, I'm 100% on board with Roger.
You and Roger should start your own podcast on addiction. Dopey.
He doesn't want to start a podcast, and he doesn't want to hear about how to do a podcast. He wants to hear what's good about your show.
Listen, if you
just telling funny stories and sort of investigating and pondering, why people do this stuff.
Dude, we barely talk about that, and you're like the biggest Dopey fan there is.
Well, those are the parts that I like the best.
No, the part that you like the best is when I talk shit.
Yes. Also, my favorite thing, if I thought about the best thing I ever heard on the show, probably the Big Bird story. That would be number 1. Probably number 2 probably is when Chris told that story about having that bottle of unknown liquid that he chugged, and it turned out to be some very powerful drug. I forget the name of it.
GHB story, the Blue Mountain Parade story.
Yeah, that was great. Those are the kinds of things that I like.
I like this. My favorite stuff on the show is like when we just sit around and talk shit. That's my favorite stuff. And I also like...
Okay. Sometimes it's good.
I also like this stuff. Roger is... he's a good guy. He's a nice Norwegian guy. But
you should thank him for his advice. It's very good advice.
Listen, I don't thank you for this. I think you should back me up on this. I think if Roger wants to make some Norwegian addiction show, he should go make the fucking Norwegian addiction show.
I think you should just take the advice and move on.
No, I'm not going to move on. And he can't tell me what makes Dopey dopey. I tell Roger what makes Dopey dopey.
You wouldn't have the show if there were no fans. There would be no show.
Listen, Roger. I call the shots on what makes Dopey dopey at this point. Chris is dead. I miss him.
Roger, I'm with you 100%.
Justin, are you fucking kidding me? You're going to take this Norwegian side on me?
Totally on his side.
Why did I call you up?
I don't know.
You're boring with
about to go to bed.
You're boring with the Buju Banton newscast, and now
Really?
you're taking Roger's side. Okay.
I didn't even think it was a good idea to talk about Buju Banton. I don't think many people on your show know who he is.
Well, maybe
They should check him out.
They're going to know now. They're going to know now. And I'm going to tell you this. Roger, I do appreciate the advice. I do think addiction is a very huge part about Dopey, because Dopey is, after all, about drugs, addiction, and what else, Justin?
Dumb shit.
That's right. It's about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit.
You got to keep the balance, though. It's all about balancing those three things.
The mystical balance of Dopey between drugs, addiction, and dumb shit is not a walk in the park. And sometimes
you get all three. That's what you want.
The formula cannot be repeated. It's not a formula show. We do not have the same format. We have a million formats, or at least we have 5 formats, right? At least 5.
Are you going to start talking about how to do podcasts now?
Dude, I wish I could just do a podcast on how to do a podcast. I miss the days of me and Chris doing a podcast on where Dopey is at. That's my favorite.
That was the part I didn't like the most.
But other people really loved that stuff.
Well, I don't know what they were thinking.
All right, enough, Justin. Do you want to hear the positive email that I have?
Sure.
All right. Hey, Dave. Hope you're doing okay. I assume things are still super tough for you without your beautiful friends. And I am sending love and good vibes your way. This is definitely not a Norwegian, by the way. And I am sending love and good vibes your way whenever I think of you and Chris and Dopey. And on that, Dopey is still smoking. Then 2 emoji hand clapping things. They don't even have hand clapping emojis in Norway, I don't think. Anyway, you're such a great interviewer, and I'm loving all the wicked guests. I meant to write.
Wicked guests?
Huh?
Wicked guests, he said.
It's a woman. This is a woman.
Oh, she.
You don't like the wicked guests?
I don't like any part of this. So.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I meant, how about that she's sending love and she thinks of Chris and it's nice stuff?
Well,
just come on.
That's not my thing.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, you're such a great interviewer, and I'm loving all the wicked guests. I meant to write and tell you how impressed I was at your complex and compassionate interview with Andy Dick. Personally, I thought that guy was a misogynist, narcissist, and I wasn't wrong. It turns out... Oh, sorry. I read that terribly. Personally, I thought that guy was a misogynist, narcissist, and I wasn't wrong, it turns out. Ha, ha, ha. But I also believe strongly in giving everyone a go, and you certainly did that, and it paid off from where I was sitting. You're so patient and positive. Unlike you.
I agree with that. That was a good interview.
Unlike you, Justin, I'm so patient and positive. It's an inspiration.
Well, true. Listen, what? I do agree with this person that you've done some very good episodes recently and that your interviewing skills have improved. I agree with that.
So it seems like you agree with everything except for what I have to say.
No, I agree that the show should be about drug stories and understanding why people relapse and why they get addicted in the first place, like the Norwegian guy said. And I agree with the second email about how your interviews have gotten good.
All right, let me finish, okay? You proved it with Artie. Let's hope he can stay strong. And you are touching so many others with your strength and vitality. It's beautiful. Bravo. How do you like that? And that's from Mandy. That's from Mandy.
It warms my heart.
That's nice.
The Artie Lange episode was a great episode.
Did you hear what happened with Artie? Artie got out of rehab. He went to court yesterday. He's 41 days off heroin. He's on Suboxone, but he tested positive for coke last week.
What is this Suboxone? I mean, I don't understand that. Like, how is it different from methadone? That's one thing as a non-heroin user I don't understand.
It's a different chemical substance, but it's just a different replacement treatment. You know, if you took Suboxone right now, you'd get higher than you've ever been.
Right.
If I took Suboxone right now, I'd get higher than I ever was.
What about methadone? Would you get high with methadone?
I would be fucking floating above my house, and so would you. We'd be dead if we took methadone right now. So Artie's on Suboxone. Artie tested positive for coke. But you want to hear something crazy?
Can I ask you a question?
You can ask me anything.
Do people ever get addicted to methadone or Suboxone first?
It's rare. I'm sure there's those stories.
Gateway drugs?
No, they're never gateway drugs. I think maybe sometimes I've heard about people who got prescriptions for methadone because they were coming off of another painkiller or something. But that's a good question. Let's throw it out into the Dopey Nation.
It's kind of interesting, right? Because if a non-user would get high from them, theoretically, you could start with that.
It doesn't give you the same. It's not as sought after high. You know, you'd get high. I remember the first time I did Suboxone, I had just started using heroin again, and I was getting heroin from kind of like this homeless shelter on Bowery. You know where that crazy hotel is on Bowery and like I want to say 5th Street, like near that bar Phoebe's. There's that nice hotel,
like right where CBGB's used to be.
Right. There, half of the block is this nice hotel and half the block is this homeless shelter. And I used to cop dope at that homeless shelter. And one time they didn't have any heroin, and the guy gave me a bunch of 8 milligram Suboxones, which are these huge orange pills. And I got higher from the Suboxone than I did from his Gabbage heroin. So, but I don't think that most people. I'm sure that there are people that start off on Suboxone because it's available and it gets them high. But the high doesn't sustain. You know what I mean? Once you're in, you're not getting high. You're getting maintained way quicker than you would be with heroin. And I'm also joking with Roger. I know Roger's point. He's very sweet. Whatever. I'm happy there are people in Norway that like.
It's a very insightful email.
Just come on, Justin. Can't you just get my back once in a while?
I agree with Roger.
You're such a dick. What was I going to say? Oh, so Artie, you know what Artie did?
What?
Artie texted me. First of all, I went to see Artie perform in near where you live in Levittown.
I don't live near there.
You live closer to Levittown than I do.
Okay, go ahead.
And he was good. And but Linda wanted to get home quickly, and I brought a Dopey hat for him. You know, so I gave the there was some guy in a very nice suit. He looked like he owned the place, so I gave him the hat, and I said, "Would you give this to Artie?" And we left. And then an hour later, Artie's posting all these pictures on Twitter of him in the Dopey hat. So
that's cool.
That was awesome. And then I texted him to thank him, and he told me that he's going to come out with a podcast, and he wants me to be on his podcast.
Well, that'd be great.
I'm sure it won't happen, but it was cool. It was a cool offer.
He should just come on your podcast. It'd be easier for him.
No, but he wants his own podcast.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of work doing a podcast.
Tell me about it.
You could podcast to Artie about doing a podcast.
Yeah, he knows how to do a podcast, though. Artie's made like almost millions of dollars just podcasting.
Didn't he do a podcast that he made people pay for?
Yeah, he did a bunch of them.
Yeah, I never listened to that.
Well,
I never listened to podcasts until I listened to your podcast.
Well, what podcasts do you listen to besides my podcast?
I don't really listen to many podcasts. Sometimes I listen to Joe Rogan now.
Is there a podcast that you're aware of that's better than my podcast?
Well, sometimes Joe Rogan is better than your podcast, but
wouldn't that also say that sometimes I'm better than Joe Rogan?
Yes, absolutely.
Wouldn't you say I'm more often better than Joe Rogan than he is better than me?
Well, I listen to yours much more than I listen to his, so it's hard to say. But a lot of people like this guy, Mark Maron, who the Dopey Nation mispronounced his name as Moran or
Dude, listen, off the air, you tell me you think I'm better than Joe Rogan. You can tell the Dopey Nation that you think I'm better than Joe Rogan.
Sometimes, yes, absolutely.
So when am I not as good as Joe Rogan?
Some of the episodes are a little bit flat, that's all.
Well, Joe Rogan doesn't wait tables and fucking commute to Long Island from the Lower East Side.
No, he does like 100 podcasts a week.
Dude, he does 3 podcasts a week, and he goes deer hunting. If I was
he lifts weights all the time.
And takes DMT. If I was doing that shit...
He shoots wild boar with arrows and stuff.
Dude, if I had a lifestyle like that, my podcast would be much better, I'm sure. I'm serious. Anyway, we're gonna end the show now. So, leave a review. Let us know what you think about Buju Banton. Is it Banton or Banton?
Banton.
Okay.
Buju Banton.
Buju Banton. And it's not Suboxone, it's Suboxone. Fucking... follow us on Instagram. There's a lot of nasty people talking about Dopey on Reddit these days. Dopey Twitter is still very loving.
I think Reddit. I don't know what Reddit is really, but it seems like a place where really creepy people hang out.
You think it's a bad place?
Yeah, go on there if you're in person.
All right, so stay away from Reddit unless you want to be supportive of the Dopey Nation on Reddit, which I could really use some nice people on our Dopey Reddit page. That would be nice. Oh, and then there's another thing that happened. There was this huge because Justin is one of the smartest people. Unfortunately, I have to admit that Justin is one of the smartest people I ever met. So,
well, thank you.
You're welcome. And Justin doesn't even have a Facebook account because he's so fucking smart, right, Justin?
I don't belong to any of that. Yeah.
So now, on Facebook, there's a page called Dopey Nation, which is a closed group of Dopey fans, right? And this week there was a major schism in the Dopey Nation, and feelings were hurt. And I just want to say to the Dopey Nation that we don't have any room for hate in the Dopey Nation. We need just love in the Dopey Nation, and especially...
I think a lot of this social media encourages hate because people can just say whatever they want without any consequences.
Willy-nilly. They just say what they want, and they don't realize that somebody on the other end...
One of the worst things about it.
Right. And somebody on the other end is going to get hurt. So I just want to wish peace in the Dopey Nation, especially around Christmas time.
I don't belong to social media, but my rule, if I did, would be don't say anything on social media that you wouldn't be willing to say to someone's face.
Right. And you don't, but you're a pussy. You wouldn't say anything to anybody's face.
That's not true, but I wouldn't go around saying things on social media that cause me to get beat up if I said it to someone's face.
Well, I think that's a good rule. But more importantly, wouldn't you say there should be peace in the Dopey Nation this Christmas time?
Absolutely.
And I'm sorry I called you a pussy. I don't mean it. So everybody out there, just take care of each other. If you got problems, reach out. If you want Dopey to be less about podcasting and more about drugs and addiction,
I vote for that. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be a hard sell. Be in touch. Stay strong, Dopey Nation. And you want to say the magic toodles for Chris?
Sure, toodles.
You just say toodles. You don't mind even. You can just say it.
What do you mean, toodles?
I can never just say toodles. I say toodles for Chris because it makes me sick that Chris would say toodles. Disgusting.
Well, I never had an issue with that.
Why not?
I mostly had an issue with how he room when he would say rum.
He would say rum.
Yeah, that would always make me a little angry. But toodles, that never bothered me. So toodles.
You want to hear something else that's crazy? Justin?
Sure.
The fourth person in the Dopey Nation just got a Dopey tattoo. Fourth Dopey tattoo.
Wow.
That I didn't pay for.
Wow.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that they think I talk too much about podcasting, these people with the Dopey tattoos?
Probably. I don't think they'd be getting tattoos about a podcast about podcasting.
They did. I'm sorry to tell you. That's exactly what they did. So stay strong, Dopey Nation, and toodles for Chris. And thank you, Justin. And listen, we're gonna end it with the Buju Banton song. So Banton song. Buju Banton song. So if you were gonna pick one, which one would you pick?
Driver A.
Driver A? Not Till I'm Laid to Rest?
No, Driver A.
I don't even know Driver A.
It's a great song. Put it on.
All right. Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and toodles.
Toodles.
For Chris.
I want you to carry this on the road for me. And don't take no time from the body. Just do what me tell you for those same style. And make sure that everything work according to how man say anything for work. See? Take back yourself and bring back yourself in a one piece. Make sure you reach. Hear me? Lord of mercy. Hey, Lord of his mercy. Lord of mercy. Driver. Don't stop at all. Drop this Arizona around an Albemarle. Driver, don't even itch. Collect a little food there and come back quick. Driver, just remember the damn speed limit. Cause if you're running the fence, my friend, that is it. I've got an Nextel phone and a singular chip. Any problem, you can reach me on this. I pounds them and buy when a tons man a ship. Green like grass, brown like chocolate. FedEx and UPS I make several trip. All me life savings are right on this. You can drink a beer but don't you dare burn a split. Listen to the marijuana make your light uplift. Even though it compress and tie down in a plastic. Don't deliver it and going up drastic. A barrel gun me bust and me and you know we can't stick. Me want change me zinc and put up the chroma stick. Tired receive Red Bull a straight hypnotic. So driver, me say don't stop at all. Drop this Arizona around an Albemarle. Driver, Me say don't even itch. Collect that little food there and come back quick. Driver, just remember the damn speed limit. Cause if you're running the fence, my friend, that is it. I beat this man and run me in and about now because my girl want wear Victoria's Secret dress. Sam no love here so you feel put in pampas. Billy a informer with federal charge. Remember, don't care nobody on me yard. So watch out me love and me no respect coward. I dep on a mission man hustling hard. Don't get to you through them and suffer and starve. Hustling ability we learn that a yard. No feel your brain big, no bother track yard. The last boy will try that dead like that. Sell off, where you have a make we set new record. Drive up, me say don't stop at all. Track this Arizona roll a Albemarle. Drive up, me say don't even itch. Collect the little spenny and come back quick. Driver, just remember the damn speed limit. And if you're running the cops, my friend, that is it. Action pop while some boy up your lip. Got them bunch of Banton cause you know you can't slip. Reach up on the rhythm for make them turn and dip. Watch it make the road wash, show them how we do it when you watch right. Make sure you maintain speed limit.
I wanna take a walk around the world. I wonder would it do me any good. Until I get some money in my pocket, then I guess I'll just have to walk around my neighborhood. But I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And I wanna take a ride up in the sky. Watch this aeroplane just pass me by. And I wanna see a Lear jetliner take a dive, just to show all of these people what it means to be alive. But I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be so good, so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. And my shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. Shadow's getting smaller and smaller. And it's time to where I stand. And I wonder would they pay it any mind when I leave this busted city far behind. I'll take the high road, however far it winds, because peace and love are very, very, very hard to find. And I wanna be good so bad. Wanna be good so bad, so bad. I wanna be good so bad. Bad desire's all I ever had. Damn it, all these suckers make me mad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And these suckers make me mad, and I wanna call my dad. And it's all I ever had. 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 And these suckers make me mad, and it's all I ever had. And I wanna call my dad. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever had. And it's all I ever